Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to ideally make some money or a lot of money on the internet. As always, I'm joined by my legendary co-host. But today, by my legendary co-host, legendary. I had to put that in there. But we also have two very special guests with us today. We have the two co-hosts of Coffee with Captain, Captain Zwingli, who is the co-founder of DGen Network and Board Shorts, advisor to Mintify and Reboot. And we also have NFT Bark, co-author of the Everything Token, community lead at Starbucks. So super happy to have these guys with us today. Absolute NFT titans, media titans too, and good friends after we met in Miami. So it's really nice to be able to do this co-show together. Just as a reminder though, before we get into the show, nothing that we say here, none of us is financial advice. None of us know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, how are you doing this Tuesday, the 23rd of January?
GM had a bit of a rough start into the day, but I gotta say I'm excited for today's show. It's the first time that we are four of us on stage live on video.
Looks
So
fun.
very excited to go for that special. I gotta say it looks good if it's four of us on video. It's gonna be a fun show.
Yeah, it's funny. You just joined the call at the start. We're about to go off on the bad
Yeah,
day.
I wanted to rant a bit, but then I had to keep it in for a while.
Steve, right? But yeah, I actually agree with you. This foursome, it looks quite nice. We've never had four people on the show today, so super happy with that. Steve, welcome to the stage with us, my friend. How are you doing? How are you feeling? Today, I believe, is the day that your book, The Everything Token, goes out
Yeah.
for sale.
Yeah,
How are
no,
you feeling
thanks.
on the day
Thanks
of the
so much.
sale?
It is it's surreal. It's exciting. It's been like because I started some content creators on stage on at one point talking about like, sometimes you work on like a piece of content for like an hour or two and then people don't see it. And I'm like, imagine if you worked on a piece of content for 2 years and then put it out. And like that's what this is. It's like this thing that's finally going to be out in the wild for people to kind of see and read. And we've got some really good early feedback on it. But we got a great Blockworks review yesterday. We got some, Bloomberg Radio this week, Google Talk this week. It's just a lot going on, but very excited. Thanks for recognition on that because it's like one of the biggest things of my career. So to be able to do it and show on the show today here is really exciting.
Yeah, super happy to have you with us on the special day. One thing I was thinking, like, we're gonna get into it like a little bit more later, but just a quick question off the bat is like people don't know the pain and struggle of like writing a book long form. Like I actually tried to write one when I was like 22 or 23, like in between my first two jobs ever, and the pain and struggle of writing and editing, it's like something that you can't really imagine at all. How long did it take you to do? Like, what was the pain point for you, or did it come quite naturally?
I think I'm very lucky because I got to write it with a co-author and a friend.
I
And we
see.
had zero arguments during it. Like we never, so because of that, it was good. And like, because we're really open and we have an editor who was like world class, we were able to be like, okay, like this is making our writing better. But it is painful because it's not like writing an article that's just really long. Like it needs to tell a story, it needs to be in order, it needs to be in chapters, things need to be culled down. So it's a lot. So not painful, but like I'm also somebody who just like loves life experiences. So I'm like, this is a cool experience. I'm getting to write a book. And like I don't look at it as like, oh, this is bad because they're editing my writing. I'm like getting better at writing and getting to go through this experience of writing a book. So sure there were times it was hard and you would like bust through and make it better. But overall, like honestly, it was a really enjoyable process. But I might just be like, blocking certain things out. Who knows?
That's so funny. Like, that's definitely one of the things I would have thought is really hard to do with someone, because to agree all the time on how you want something constructed must be quite difficult. Captain, welcome to the stage with us. I'm sure you, as co-host with Steve, would say similar things. No arguments ever, no friction, all smooth sailing, or is that not the case?
No, I mean, I mean, to give you an idea, I can't stop laughing because Steve and I, we normally don't do video for our show. We don't do video for our show. It's just audio only. And we both show up today on video wearing the exact same hoodie. So you take that. I mean, that pretty much sums up our show and being on the same page. But no, excited to be here. Really appreciate all you guys do to warm us up every day. I know Steve and I both have been getting our news nuggets for quite some time from the modern market. So excited to cross over the bridge and join you behind the scenes for once.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining us, man. And yeah, if people don't know for whatever reason, although I think people do, obviously Captain and Steve's show goes straight on after hours. So if you are ever in the mood for more content, more quality conversation, definitely head into theirs straight after, because I think we're actually quite aligned in the way we don't run similar shows, but in terms of like where we pitch it, I think we're quite similar in the types of people we might attract. So definitely check that out. But we do need to get into the rest of the news. As always, all the headlines that I bring to you are coming from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. If you do find it to be valuable to you, please do give it a like. So let's get into it, starting with the price action. Everything is down, which is not good. Not good start. Legendary, I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the reason to your bad start to your day. Bitcoin is down 4% at 38.9. ETH down 7% at 2.2. Solana down 8% at 80. Ape down 7% at 1.3. So red across the board there in crypto. NFT volume at 14.6 on ETH. Solana at 9.9. Bitcoin at 7.8. In terms of the headlines, got Sotheby's Ordinals auctions being a real huge success. Multiple six-figure sales across Taproot Wizards, Des Lucrece, Black Rare Sat, and Inscription 21, all selling for more than six figures. So very impressive there. We'll dive into that. Number two, non-fungible DAO to release NFT linked to Magic Eden. Want to discuss what's going on with Magic Eden as a marketplace and maybe the marketplace battle that's taking place at the moment. We saw Tensor also come out with some important news yesterday. We'll discuss that later. And finally, FTX sold about $1 billion of Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF, which should explain much of the outflow. I wonder if that means we can now see a bit of a bounce. Legendary is going to speak to that in just a second. Getting into the floor prices, we've got CryptoPunks consolidating a bit at 63.5 ETH. We've got Bored Apes up a percent at 25.7, Mutants at 4.5, DGods at 3, Captains up a few percent at 4.8, Azuki at 7.4, Penguins at 18.2, Moonbirds at 1.1, Nouns winning bid was at 8.3. Again, a couple of top sales being CryptoPunks. No surprise there with the run that they've experienced most recently. Legendary, those are the headlines. That is the price action. Any numbers standing out to you immediately?
I would definitely have to say the punks. We have seen the massive run up. We have been discussing it extensively, but still seeing so many sales happening above floor and so many people going shopping for specific punks, or also like expressing interest on the timeline. I think Loopify said he is in the market for a hoodie punk again, and many others, or many. Oh, he already bought it, even better than to that point. So it's good to see that positive momentum being sustained around the punks.
Yeah, we dove into the punks situation quite a lot yesterday. It was interesting to talk about it. Clearly, a lot of buying pressure. One point someone made in private was that even the 2020 run up. I wonder what you think about this, Legendary, and Steve or Cap would love to hear you come in on this as well. The idea that we've started to kind of talk about these assets as, you know, grail assets, and everyone wants to get in because they've demonstrated that they've existed for so long, and therefore they're the things that people want. But someone made the point in private yesterday that ultimately a lot of the 2021 move was still purely speculation as well, like purely speculation, purely trying to get in just ahead of someone else in order to be able to sell to them. To what extent do you think that's still the case, Legendary?
That the punk buying is still a pure speculation.
Yeah, speculate, because I think we started talking about it yesterday as if
depends. I would say it depends on the
assets.
Gotcha. I think it depends on the time horizon, right? So if you look at punks, and NFT stats had pointed it out yesterday wonderfully, that they've been in that range between 40, 45 to 60, 65-ish ETH for such a long period of time. So really the expectation with buying a punk is not to like expect a 3 or 4x in the short run, but if you say you want to get ahead of others and you think in terms of, you know, a multi-year horizon, and you think like this is the grail of digital assets and might be in super high demand in 7 to 8 years, and if this is your investment horizon and thesis for that, then you could attribute to the purchase to getting ahead, but certainly not within a singular cycle to get ahead at the start of the cycle and try to outperform everything else. Then I wouldn't say that this is the reason for people buying punks.
Interesting stuff. Captain, what's your thought on the kind of punk run that we saw over the weekend? We spoke about it a lot on the show yesterday. Now that it's kind of set in a little bit, where's your head at with it?
Yeah, I think at least from the ones I see on my timeline, I really do think it's collectors collecting what they want to collect. And I think the other unlock, at least and I know you guys are into NFT-fi here. I started it really, I was able to build my portfolio through the last run thanks to NFT-fi early on, but it was like
Really?
very primitive. It was like where NFT-fi, like .com was like about the only NFT-fi platform out there. And so why I think that's important is I feel like far more, a much bigger percentage of the space is aware of NFT-fi now, and like someone like myself, like I'm not at a spot where I can afford a punk just to sit on, right? Like my trading it's just outside of my range as far as any sort of flip, or if I'm putting, like I don't have that kind of capital just to set idle as a store of value. However, the fact that you can go pick up a punk and pull 70% loan to value out, now that changes things, and I think now people are much more willing to get a grail asset that they plan to hold for a decade because of the ability to pull liquidity out of it on a minute's notice. I think that is a massive unlock. And I think we're going to see more and more of that this cycle, that people are going to pick up assets that maybe past cycle they weren't ready for, but now they can pick up, vault that asset while still being able to tap into that liquidity.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big points I've been making a lot speaking about this. And I actually interviewed Seed Phrase and G-Funk for Gondi, for whom I'm an ambassador. And they're obviously in this NFT-fi game as well. And they explained their strategy with respect to Squiggles. And they're like 8 times levered on Squiggles. And this is like public info because it was a public interview. But they would basically have one, stick it in, take out the cash, add a little bit extra, buy another one, stick it in, take out the cash again. So it's like exactly that thesis where, like, for the strongest digital assets, you can keep taking capital out, maybe do something else, but equally if you want to lever up on that specific asset, you can do that over and over again should you wish to for some of them, because the deals are so good. One follow-up question, Cap, and then Steve, I'm going to come to you. You mentioned you kind of did that in the previous bull cycle. That must have been very early. What did you do it with, and like what was your risk appetite at that time? Like, did you feel like this was a big risk you were taking, given that it was so new?
I guess I think it was also so early that the dollar amounts weren't as large. Like, and I did it primarily on my Yuga assets. Like I was fortunate I minted a few apes. I still hold 2, and I hold those. I didn't have to sell them to fund my trading activity last cycle because of NFT-fi. Now at the time it was, it might have been taking out like a 1 ETH loan on a mutant, or even a kennel dog at one point. But like some of the learning lessons, like from last cycle, like I missed out on an airdrop because I had an asset on a NFT-fi contract, and it was airdrop. It was a VCon ticket that was airdropped, and now VCon made it right, and they ended up sending me a ticket. But it was like, I shouldn't say they made it right. It was my mistake, right? It was like that sort of stuff. Like it was so new. Now I will say today, like my PFP, I don't play around with DeFi. I don't know why. I should have enough confidence in things like BinDAO and NFT-fi and Gondi. But I leave that one sit in a cold wallet, and I do my NFT-fi with my second ape and a mutant.
Completely fair enough. It's funny how, like, if it's literally the PFP, it takes this like
it doesn't make any sense. Logically, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I won't touch that one. But the other ones is where I go dabble in the NFT-fi streets with.
No, I get it. Something attached to your identity. That does make sense to me. Steve, you've got some thoughts on this punk run and this punk move, huge move over the weekend. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like there's really 2 types of people who I think are collecting these punks for the most part, because I think Legendary nailed it. Like, there aren't really, if you're buying a punk, like, you're not buying it to like flip and watch price go up, because there are a lot better ways you can do that. I remember during the bull, Our friend Mitch, who was the, in charge of MBHQ, who was a member of the DJ Network War Room early on, he had these rules about being liquid and how you were, leveraging it. And at one point, I remember him saying, and it was kind of shocking to hear when Bored Apes were at like 25 or something. He's like, I could buy 4 Bored Apes right now if I'm liquid. He's like, but that's not the best place for my money because the opportunity for them to go up. And of course, the Bored Apes were the one place that thesis was wrong at the time. But the point was like his perspective was that if you're a trader who's trying to make money in this market, you're not buying a punk now for that reason. You're buying a punk to hold for a long time, to extract liquidity against to sort of trade the way Cap said. Buying one for, the run up, like there's a bunch of better places you can like fire bullets to do that if that's your goal. So I don't think that that's what this is. I think to the points that have been made here, it's collectors and people who are trying to get their grail assets. It's people looking for forever PFPs, or it's people who are looking to leverage that liquidity against it. Because otherwise, again, in a market like this, with not just the Ethereum ecosystem, but the Bitcoin ecosystem, the Solana ecosystem really starting to boom, there's so many more opportunities where you could find money and ways to kind of trade your way up.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. It's about opportunity cost, isn't it? And it feels like even a healthy 20, 30% rise is like not good enough in the type of market that we're in at the moment. How much are you like, how are you thinking about the opportunity cost at the moment, Steve? Like where would you be looking for the most outsized returns, and where are you being a bit more conservative?
I'm probably the bad person to ask this question to, because I'm more of a collector and my logic doesn't follow. So like I do things like I'll have a plan, I'll get like allow lists for like crypto undeads, and I'll be like, sweet, I'm gonna flip all these things, and then I'll be like, yo, I really like this one piece of art. I'm gonna pay 2x floor for this one, and then I'm like, well, I just completely smashed any gains I had on this by buying my grail. I did this with doodles. I got the 3 or 4 doodles allow list spots or whatever it is you got. And what I ended up doing was selling a bunch to ultimately get the grail when I was looking for. I was like, this defeated the purpose of what I was supposed to do here. So I'm horrible at this. I tend to get like luckier in the sense that like, airdrops and things like that from holding these grail collections. And like, that's where I tend to find my opportunity, is that like by holding and being part of these communities which I truly enjoy, and being part of like these, getting the utility out of these things, I end up getting, the situation where I'll be able to sell like the assets that come with them, or the airdrops that come with them. Or with Bored Apes for a while, I didn't have to sell my Bored Ape because not just the Yuga assets that they were dropping us, but people would be giving allow list to Bored Apes. Then you would mint that, and you would sell that. So that tends to be how I end up playing it. It's a little bit more, it's hilarious for me to say the term conservative in this context. It's like when we think like the conservative, like boring person is the one who has Bitcoin in our world. Whereas like in the traditional world, if you're buying Bitcoin, you're out of your mind. It's like, that's how I'm with NFTs, where it's like, I'm conservative in that I hold the assets, I get the airdrops, things like that, more so than trading and doing the DeFi game.
Yeah, that's so true. But yeah, definitely a legit collector. I love the background that you've got on video, like all kinds of cool posters, cool collectibles. Just a reminder to the folks who are listening in, we're live on X, but we're also live on YouTube too. So if you want to check Steve and Cap out on YouTube, you know where to go. Legendary, we were talking there about a little bit of crypto undeads, a little bit of buying, holding. What are you thinking in terms of the opportunity cost at the moment?
Yeah, just wanted to add to the crypto undeads. Like I'm the same essentially. I got the whitelist. I was definitely there to flip them and take profits. Then we had dollars speak on our spaces for like what 5-6 minutes. I'm like, oh, this guy's eloquent. Let's keep them. Let's roll with them. So yeah, plans can change with me pretty quickly as well. In terms of the opportunity cost, I think it really depends what you want to do and where you are at with your journey in your portfolio, right? If you're here to make it in this bull cycle, then you're definitely not going to be interested for like the 20, 30, 40% gains. If you already made significant profits last cycle, then you're like super happy to put your money into Blast and have the expectation to make anywhere between, I don't know, like 20 to 40% on that. So it depends where you are on the portfolio totem pole, if we want to use our favorite analogy once more in a different context.
Yeah, makes sense. Just a human question for me, kind of thinking about that to you guys as very prominent Spaces hosts. It literally happened the other day where Dollar jumped on our stage, uninvited, unexpected, and really turned the mood. Like, I think a lot of people being fairly critical of crypto undeads, and I do think he spoke fairly eloquently. And, you know, gauging from the comments, people really were like moved by the way he spoke and like, oh, you know, going to give him a try. Legendary literally didn't flip his crypto undead as a consequence of hearing that. Does that happen to you guys often as well, where like you get a chance, once you invite someone on, you feel like you somehow feel more connected to them and then feel a bit worse about just doing the quick flip? Maybe Captain first.
Yeah, Steve is nicer than I. I will sometimes lean into the other side of it, not just for the bit, but just for some fun back and forth. But no, it happens more often than not. We'll be talking about a topic, a project, a founder, and then out of nowhere they pop up on the stage, and it really does. Like we say, it's one thing. Like you hear all these like the shit posters will talk a bunch of trash online, then you meet them in person, and they're like, you know, they're docile.
Yeah.
It really does bring a human element to the reality is there's people behind all these PFPs. These founders are real people, and most of them are decent human beings. And I think we get so caught up in number go up that it's easy to be critical and talk trash. And then you hear from someone, especially if they're well spoken like Dollar is, and it's like, maybe they aren't, they aren't trying to rug us on this one. It's just I think there's also a little bit of bear market PTSD for many of us that like, yes, while we'd like to give the benefit of the doubt, it's like, oh, we've seen this one play out before. And it's like, so I think it's almost an uphill battle for any new founder, is they almost have to overcome some of the baggage that was left behind by their predecessors.
Yeah, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. Steve, you wanted to come in on that as well.
Yeah, I would say same thing. And again, similarly, I'm also like keenly aware, and I think everyone on this call is too, how hard these founders work and how much time they put into it. And I think that that's something that coming up in this market, like being in early 2021, and a lot of these people were my friends before they were founders, and I got to know them in the space running around. And so like I have this level of knowing a lot of them on a human level. There's also things like, I won't name names because I'm not that guy, but like there are things I have not bought because I've met people early on in 2021, and I've had those same on the other side of that. But to your point, like when somebody pops on our stage or we have these guests and then we get to know them offline and have those conversations, it's like, wait, this person's spending 90 hours a week. I mean, even like Kevin Rose catches a lot of flack. It's like Kevin Rose, I don't know this to my understanding, he's not made a single dollar off Moonbirds based on how he did things, right? They took venture funding, that has to go back. And it's like when you learn things like that, you're like, wait a minute, like we're really hard on these people who are spending like a disproportionate amount of time that someone like Kevin Rose has no need to spend this much time. He is very wealthy and self-made. And it's just a small example of like the many founders you end up talking to and realizing, oh, okay, like these people care. They spend a ton of time on this. And I would almost rather, and again, this is me as a collector, maybe go down with the ship supporting my friends sometimes than be the person who's sort of just, selling and kind of like talking trash when like it's not easy and decisions are hard to make here. So to me, that's how I feel about it.
I like it. That makes a lot of sense. Legendary, maybe that's the strategy we can employ. You can be loyal and go down with the ship, and I can take the opposite role and make the profit. How do you feel about that?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm the one going down with the ship, but reality often turns out to be like that when I'm round tripping things. But although I have gotten better at taking profits, there was a massive takeaway from the last cycle. I've been definitely more on the discipline side this time.
Dude, I don't even know how you track your profits. You've got, do you still have 2,000 NFTs, or have you like gone down to 1,800 and something?
No, I'm in the 3 digits now. I did get
Really?
rid of quite a lot of stuff. Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you like? I'm in the same boat. I've got like, I would love to get to triple digit NFTs, but the time it would take to go through and list all them, it's like that is like my nightmare. Is there some mass exodus thing you have like an easy button, or to just take the time to grind out and list them all?
Just view it as a multi-month project and basically call it a progress. If you list like 20 a day and you do that for a couple of months, you get quite some volume, and go like for super long listings and basically accept the fact that some of the stuff is going to have news and pump and you're going to have no idea what happened, and just realized you sold before 10x happened, but at least you have some clarity and cleanliness in your portfolio.
Makes sense. Nice little bit of insight into portfolio management there as well from the guys. Look, let's get into the headlines today. The first one, we've obviously started with this $1 billion of Bitcoin being sold off by FTX. you know, we were incredibly bullish not too long ago about the ETF going through, and we saw the spike up during the day. And since that moment, it's just been red almost every day, punishing selling. Legendary, do you want to kind of set this up and explain what's going on?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think there's been a bit of confusion maybe going on the timeline, what's happening with the BTC price, and I think that the one of the most important takeaways, at least, is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which we've also been talking about on the show for quite a lot of time. And if you look at that, there's been outflows exceeding $2 billion. And if you then try to break down, there was a great article on CoinDesk they were kindly sharing live for the people watching us on YouTube, break down those outflows, you would see that FTX accounts for 22 million shares of those GBTC Grayscale Bitcoin Trust shares that have been sold as part of the liquidation. They were worth close to $1 billion. So almost half or around half of the outflows are FTX liquidating their Bitcoin. The good news on that is that that was all of their holdings in GBTC, so they should be done with selling those shares and dumping BTC on the market. And I do still think very much, even though we've seen that correction from 45, 46K now down to 38K, 38.8K, that this is nothing to really be worried about in the long run. And it was to be expected that FTX isn't done with liquidating this stuff. I mean, that's publicly available data. So that really shouldn't shock the market, because that was a move that was expected to happen.
Yeah, sometimes it's funny when people in hindsight, I mean, I know what you mean when you say that it was expected to happen, but at the same time, I didn't hear people talking about it at the time.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about the timeline necessarily, right? I'm not
Sure.
talking about us degens looking at the daily prices, but like at the bigger people coming into those new BTC ETFs, etc. Institutional money certainly is aware about the FTX situation, so I don't think that those guys are going to be spooked away now that they saw BTC going from 45 to 38K in the weeks after the ETF approval.
Yeah, I'm just going to focus on a couple of points here just to clarify. The data CoinDesk saw suggests FTX accounted for much of that selling, the 22 million shares it sold, which took FTX's GBTC ownership down to zero. So I think we can confirm that that's down to zero now. We're worth close to $1 billion. Bitcoin's price has tumbled since the ETFs were approved, a stark juxtaposition against the high hopes people had before the SEC announced its decision. This is from the CoinDesk article. Bitcoin ETFs have been touted as a much easier way for normal people to invest in Bitcoin, triggering wildly optimistic forecasts for Bitcoin's price. The value of FTX's GBTC holding rose to around 900 million based on the first day of Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF trading on January the 11th, when it closed the trading session at $40. Okay, so I think does that mean we're in the clear then, Legendary? That's the key question. Like, say all of this has been forced selling from the FTX estate. What do you think that means for where we are now then? Are we in the clear?
I don't know. I haven't had a look at all. Maybe I can try to figure it out in the meantime at all the other holdings that FTX still has, that I don't know how much else they have to liquidate, but at least for the GBTC dump, we should be in the clear. Yeah.
Interesting. We've got Matthew with his hand raised. He's often providing quite smart thoughts on macro and things like this. Matthew, welcome to the stage. What are your thoughts? Are we in the clear after this Bitcoin selling, or is there more to come?
Good morning, everybody. Awesome to see Steve and Captain here as well. GM, everybody. I think it's an interesting question about whether we're in the clear. A lot of this selling pressure has caused, liquidations of other folks as well. So that's a bit of a cascading effort. Typically, when you see sell-offs like this, it's going to be a little bit of a question of confidence. So you're going to be having some people questioning whether it's going to continue to go down or whether it's going to continue to stay stable. So I would love to see a bottom actually come in. And of course, if there's no bottom on BTC, then alts typically have no bottom. So we'd love to just see some stabilization around 38K as resistance. One other quick thing is folks need to remember that when they sell assets of an estate, they have to do it on open order books. And so that's why you're going to see a lot of this selling pressure. There's not really there's been a great amount of absorption in the BTC price, but people hear Michael Saylor go buy $500 million of Bitcoin and the price doesn't move. And that's because he's using like special order books and special back order books that help displace that pricing. So it's not like a whale moving the market, but when they're selling assets from a stewardship or from like a bankruptcy or something like that, they just have to go sell it on the open market. So that's why you're going to see a lot of that pressure from selling.
Yeah, interesting point. Thanks so much for that additional context, Matthew. We're going to keep it moving. I think that kind of touches to the extent that we wanted to on the Bitcoin news. I'm also sick of the ETF stuff, frankly. Just want the price to start going back up again. Let's get into the Sotheby's news, because I think this is really significant, and it builds on a conversation I was having with someone yesterday about just being really bullish on the Bitcoin ecosystem. Want to dive into that a bit more, but just the headline news, I think, is that the Sotheby's auction, which was for ordinals exclusively, had some really, really high sales, which closed just yesterday. This is a tweet from NFT Stats, who is just joined us on stage. Maybe he can speak to it in just a second. We had a Taproot Wizard Genesis Cat selling for 252,000. That's 105 ETH. The Lucrece Benediction from Between Worlds selling for 95k. Inscription 21 selling for more than 100k. A Black Rare Sat selling for 165k. So like multiple six-figure ordinal sales. Legendary first, what's your thought on the Bitcoin ordinals?
It still is an ecosystem that I need to get more into. I mean, it's obviously amazing to see sales that exceed 1 BTC. I would kind of say this is a bit of the magical number, the magical barrier, because everything that's more than 1 BTC is already getting into the territory where it competes with not only competes, where it competes with the top collection on ETH apart from Punks, where it competes with apes. And seeing obviously sales at $250,000 will help to drive more media attention, etc., and makes me experience my FOMO for not being too much into ordinals to an even stronger degree. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, look, my key thing here, I don't know if NFT Stats just dropped down or whether you want to try to get him back up, Legendary, whether he's having some technical issues, but this is what I was thinking about ordinals, and I was speaking through this with someone yesterday. Every ecosystem is far more advanced on ETH and Solana. You have DeFi has played out on ETH, and you have the cultural layer via NFTs, which has played out on ETH, and we're starting to see that on Solana already, where there's all kinds of DeFi going on, as well as an NFT ecosystem, marketplaces, really innovating. Got Tensor's news yesterday about being able to go long and short on NFTs as well. So that's happened on ETH. It's happening on Solana, but for some strange reason, because of the order and trajectory of different chains developments, Bitcoin, which is the biggest coin, is behind. And so to me, that presents like a crazy asymmetric investment opportunity. And we were talking about ways to try to get exposure to some of the infrastructure being built on Bitcoin, because we already know the things that will be required, right? Like all the things that are on ETH will be required for Bitcoin. All of the things that are on Solana will be required for Bitcoin. Like Solana's already speed running the trajectory on ETH in terms of DeFi and the cultural side. Like I see that also happening on Bitcoin, especially if there seems to be this much demand for ordinals. Legendary, do you want to speak to that first, and then would love to hear other people's thoughts too?
Yeah, I mean that's a very, very good thought, especially if you come from the trading perspective, and we've seen that repetition of metas play out over the last years so often, right? We've seen DeFi Summer on L1, then we've seen Polygon as the first like L2, well back then kind of side chain solution popping off, and the DeFi action repeating on there. We've seen meme coins last season on BNB, then on ETH. Now we're seeing them on ETH, then on Solana. So all of these things, as you said, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of other protocols, we've been building on ETH. You just have to look at how the history played out on ETH, how it played out on other chains, and then see which parts of it are very, very likely to also repeat on BTC. Of course, with the caveat that smart contracts or smart contract-like features are a bit more difficult to set up on the Ordinals ecosystem, at least to the extent of my knowledge, and that might all take a bit more time. But generally, having a look at how other cycles on other chains played out, and then trying to learn from that for a new opportunity chain ecosystem, whatever you're looking at, is definitely a very, very smart thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, for sure, it might take a little bit longer, but it's coming. And it's incredibly bullish that all of these, that there's this pent up demand for things on Bitcoin, which means the other stuff will get built. That's my position at the moment. Would love to welcome Sam up to the stage and maybe to give his thoughts on this. Sam, I know you reported a lot on these huge ordinal sales. What do you think of the opportunity on Bitcoin right now?
Man, I'm not great at that question. Look, like, yeah, it was a big auction. If you compare it to, and I don't even know if it's appropriate to compare it to like the ETH auctions, but everything combined of these 18 lots sold for like what one Fidenza sold at a Sotheby's auction, over the summer. So I don't think it's at a place here where we're like, this is overtaking everything, or this is like the only story in town, because the numbers weren't that huge relative to where like kind of like the historic provenance ETH NFTs have sold. But still, yeah, I mean, there are clearly a lot of people making a bet that kind of the framework that's been set up, where they just decided basically that uncommon sats are like the first ones of blocks, and rare sats are I don't know, the first ones every few weeks or whatever. And people have run with the framework that an individual person put a Medium post out about a year ago. And and I think one of the projects that's interesting is Commoners, which is coming out today. They were supposed to come out yesterday. They had a delay, but basically it's a free to mint ordinal, but you can only mint if you have an uncommon sat. And the floor for uncommon sats right now is about $500 US, 0.012 Bitcoin. So, or maybe it's a little bit lower now with Bitcoin's move, but this is going to be an interesting one to follow, because it's kind of like fun, kind of quirky art, nothing crazy, but it's playing on this theme of kind of going into that Bitcoin framework and saying, yes, there's been the first 10,000 or 10K PFP project. There have been low inscription numbers, but we're going to be the first 10K PFP project that only uses uncommon sats. So I don't know, I think that there's interesting stuff there, but it's and I said this yesterday, like the thing I like about punks is that they've been around for 7 years. So we know that the story is kind of enshrined a little bit. Like I think with these stories, it's like a lot of people making up narratives that matter, and it'll be, and time will tell what sticks and what stays relevant. We're still very early days, and you just never know. Like the thing about provenance is you never know what it's going to be real time. Like Chromie Squiggles, CryptoPunks, Fidenzas, Bored Apes, all the huge projects on the ETH side were extremely cheap and kind of like little experiments at the time. And time is what made them special. I think here people are trying to jump the gun and say, I declare this as uniquely historic before history actually makes that decision. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Like it, interesting stuff. And yeah, I do like the fact that there's this kind of battle on Bitcoin to be the first to this, the first to that. And there does seem to be some interesting angles that people are taking in order to try to either create provenance or to tell a slightly different story. So I think that's all very fun. Steve, I know you wanted to come in on this. What are your thoughts on the Bitcoin side of things?
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of the same stuff as Sam, so I'll just verbally retweet that. But I'll also say, like, there is something to be said about, like, two things I would build on that. Number one, the fact that Sotheby's is doing this. I remember when one of the early conversations I had in 2021 with my non-crypto friends was, they're like, well, I don't know what NFTs are, but I know one sold at Sotheby's, the 500, first 5,000 every days, which was like a $69 million sale. And she's like, and that was, Sotheby's is fancy. So it's like, one, I would build on that. The art world is so open-minded, and I appreciate that. Whereas much as we can say like, oh, the world doesn't accept this or that, like the art world doesn't care. They care about art. So that's one thing that's really interesting. But then just to build on kind of what Sam said at the end there, for people trying to trade this ecosystem, the infrastructure is very hard to trade on, which again reminds me a little bit of early ETH and things, when there wasn't the infrastructure. But beyond that, I cannot make heads and tails of what is going to work on Bitcoin. I swore on Chain Monkey was going to have a hot run, and then they're kind of sitting there. Meanwhile, like these puppets. I love the memes, but I see these puppets running on the timeline, and it's like really funny to see. So like, it's a very cost prohibitive ecosystem, and I think we're going to continue to see the things that Sam was saying there, where you're going to see the build on of hey, if you own this, you get this, and there's going to be sort of that build on that. If you're in the ecosystem and actively participating, you're going to be rewarded. I just don't know if a lot of people have the time and capital to figure it out, but I think those who do are going to absolutely kill in this next bull, because there are going to be opportunities. It's just, I'm one of those people who I'm like, I don't know if I have the capital or the time. Legendary mentioned getting more involved, to throw a lot of bullets at that and hope that it works. So it's a very weird, novel ecosystem right now, and I love watching it play out, but I'm not sure I have the capital to deploy into it. But I think a lot of people who do will be really successful.
Yeah, I like that take. And it's a smart take, because look, we've been saying for ages and ages, like, we need to do more research. We need to do more research on Bitcoin in particular, because we're ETH. Are we ETH native? I mean, we do explore other places, but that's clearly what we've come up on. We need to get more accustomed to more things on Bitcoin. But the main thing I was thinking is, in terms of the infrastructure, like, I want to be trying to invest in all of the things that we know need to play out in order for this system to flourish. So I want to know what the best marketplaces are on Bitcoin. I want to know what the Uniswap of Bitcoin is. I want to know what protocol is going to restake Bitcoin. I saw something about, like, Eigenlayer is a huge narrative right now on ETH for restaking ETH. And I've seen Picasso is doing something like that for Solana. My understanding is not exactly the same, but Solana restaking. Well, I know Bitcoin is like a different thing and probably doesn't even do staking in the same way, but like, to try to see how those narratives plays out in one, and then apply it to Bitcoin, because it seems like they're going to follow each other, at least in some capacity. Kusho, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What are your thoughts here?
GM, I really hope I don't forget all the things that I have to say in my head right now. The first thing I noticed was like the thing that you said was very brilliant, which was the beginning of your take, which was like, you think that there's going to be infrastructure developing on Bitcoin in the same way that we're seeing it on ETH, and I think that that's very real. That's very true, because in a lot of ways, some other things are being built on Bitcoin aside from these art-related projects. So, for example, we have Liquidium that does borrowing and lending, and that's like a not a copy, but like similar to Gondi, but like on Bitcoin. So the only real difference is that to kind of lend and borrow assets on there is kind of expensive, really, because even the lower side of these things are going for like 0.03 kind of BTC, 0.01 BTC. Those are like the smaller collections, and these things are expensive to explore. These things are expensive to play with. But the other thing that I would notice is that there's a lot of reputable people in the Bitcoin ecosystem that have kind of been dormant for like the past how many years where nothing was happening on Bitcoin. So what we're trying to see right now is like the whole ecosystem is being speed run in terms of the development, in terms of the connections that they're using to kind of get into these places where conversations are happening. So a lot of people like Far, for example, is very close and has ties with traditional art in many areas. The Asprey studio is also getting very, very involved. The members of their studio that kind of hold the Bugatti NFTs, I've seen them in a lot of other art focused projects. So it's kind of like one of these things where not just the development in terms of infrastructure, but the development in terms of the kinds of communities that we have seen in ETH are also going to reappear on Bitcoin. So we are going to see very prominent art collector kind of groups, very prominent gallery type of groups. So these are the kind of things that we're going to see pop up. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity to be active and to participate in Bitcoin beyond diving in on the technical level. So just get into Magic Eden, buy some shit, get into Liquidium, borrow and learn some things, And these are kind of like the easiest ways to get exposure into the ecosystem. It's really not that difficult, and this is to motivate you, Captain, Legendary, and Steve. It's not that difficult, but I mean, there's a bit of technical barrier, but you can definitely figure it out in no time.
That's awesome. Awesome for the inspirational speech, Kusho. We know we need to do it. We need to get onto it. As you say, I do agree that there's some serious opportunity there. Captain, you wanted to weigh in on this. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, circling back to the earlier part of the conversation, I'm one of the protocols or I guess platforms I'm most excited about on the Ordinals ecosystem is NFTFi. I think there's it really resonates with me, the idea of RWAs on Bitcoin once we get to the phase where we're putting home deeds and car titles and that sort of stuff on chain. At that, like, yes, you can certainly NFTify works for these, these high-end art pieces, but I think that is going to be another big unlock. And we start looking ahead to what protocols, what platforms are coming to ordinals. To me, I'm really excited to see what gets developed in the NFTify space, and I think that could unlock a lot of new interest in not just what we currently think of when it comes to NFTify lending, but our RWAs in particular.
Absolutely. Do you think there would be a big reason for people to use Bitcoin instead of ETH for that RWA ecosystem?
I just think if you're talking like higher dollar assets that aren't meant to be transacted at high frequency, I think it makes sense to have something on the quote unquote more secure chain in Bitcoin. I'm fine with ETH, but I can see the desire to store those assets on the more robust chain.
Makes a lot of sense. Steve, you wanted to come in, put a bow on this topic for us.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say to keep an eye on, because Cap's talking very logically about software usages of chains, so I'm going to go degen the other direction with it, because I think that's, he's correct in like thinking about it that way. I think the other thing to think about is, what are fungible tokens going to look like on Bitcoin, and how is that going to play into the ecosystem? We had On-Chain Monkey actually, on our show mentioned that was a possibility. We asked them if they were releasing a fungible token on Bitcoin. They kind of didn't answer and didn't, give us a clear one. And then yesterday we see Jason Fang, tweeting about Karma Coin coming on. So it's like, is there going to be a run towards that sort of thing? And what does that mean? Because it's on Bitcoin, are they going to be higher value? Is the airdrop going to be worth more? What are you going to need to do for that? So that's another thing to pay attention to. I'm not smart enough about the infrastructure to know the direction it goes, but, hearing Danny Yang talk about that as a possibility, then seeing it potentially dropped, I have to imagine, if that does well for them, it's going to be copycat, and we may have, people trading on, slow blocks, trying to trade, altcoins on Bitcoin, which sounds hilarious. But, that's one thing to keep an eye on from the trading side, if that potentially starts to happen with those collections.
Makes sense. Definitely one to keep on top of. Let's bring everyone up to date with the rest of the news from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. This is the other things that have been taking place in the last 24 hours. Number one, Tensor announces a price lock, a simple way to long or short NFTs, talking about this innovation in the kind of marketplace wars. Number two, Animoca Brands announced as partners with Anime Foundation, powered by Manga. Number three, the Woo centralized exchange partners with Floor Protocol to list fractionalized NFT tokens. That's the first centralized exchange working with Floor Protocol. Number four, Tornado Cash developer releases a video asking for financial help with their legal defense. This is obviously the Cash Mixer protocol, and he was arrested as a consequence of his work on that as a dev. In a couple more pieces of news, two autoglyphs were acquired by Canvas, a pseudonymous collector, and Rafiq Anadol announces an exhibition at the Serpentine in London. Final piece of news, we want to talk a little bit about the Everything token, conscious of time, as Cap and Steve will be rolling straight into their show as well. Final piece of news, Legendary, is the non-fungible DAO powered by NFT seems to be something to do with Magic Eden. What's your kind of TLDR on the NFT token?
The TLDR is that this is the best cash tag ever. Like, the NFT token is pretty cool. Like, if that is a successful thing, and obviously Magic Eden has been ramping up quite a lot with the partnership with Yuga Labs, with the wallet, their own wallet that is currently in beta testing, with a foundation that's obviously linked to those token rumors as well. If people would start to see that as a proxy for NFTs, that could be obviously purely speculative, right? But still a massive thing if that narrative would prevail. So definitely interesting to see what Magic Eden is working on, and how that will play out with all of the different products that they're currently developing.
Makes sense. Have you guys had any big exposure to Magic Eden, Captain? Have you been over there exploring?
I have a little bit. Yeah, it's where I do all my. I've not made it over to Tensor yet. My Solana buying and selling has taken place on Magic Eden, and I think we get an announcement today. I think the Yuga Magic Eden collaborative marketplace. I think that comes today. I'm pure. I have no inside info. I'm just guessing. I think we've got the teases for Magic Eden. Yuga tends to do announcement dumps, like they'll do one right after the other, and if not today, I think we get that announcement very soon.
Interesting stuff. I do think they're gearing up to really take on everyone, right? They want royalties back. They want these things to work in the way that favors them a bit better, and a lot of good marketplaces. I think this is good for competition. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Magic Eden to me is like the pudgy penguins of marketplaces. They're just cooking so hard right now. It's like you have a Yuga partnership. The product is incredibly easy to use. They have a bunch of personalities on that team who are, you've got, executives who can do shows. Like we've had, people, we have the co-founder on our show and very dynamic person. They have people like Johnny who's working on product. They have people like Bo's working on product. So like they have this like really almost this cool factor about them, but also these big things coming, the token and like the actual product itself that they're using and the Yuga partnership. And it feels like they're primed to potentially be, I agree, competition is good for innovation. I just don't know if they become like sort of like the Facebook to the MySpace, which I know Facebook gets eye rolls from people who are, younger, who, didn't exist in the 90s, but like Facebook actually became like a thing that really killed MySpace and became like the social media site. I could see Magic Eden doing that to other ones because the product is so good and they have such a sort of swagger about them right now that they have all the momentum. And I love using the product. I use it more than pretty much any other product right now. I don't even use OpenSea. I don't trade a lot of ETH stuff. When I do it, and it tends to be on Blur because it's a good product. It's easy to use. So yeah, I'm super bullish on Magic Eden just as a marketplace, doing all the right things for this market.
Amazing. I definitely need to up my usage. Sounds very, very good. From the NFT token to the NFT token, the everything token, Steve. Your book, as we mentioned at the top of the show, is coming out today. We're so happy that you've joined us on the day. How are you feeling about it? Just for the people who don't know, this is a little bit of the blurb. A Harvard Business School professor, an A16Z crypto research partner and career marketer and Web3 entrepreneur demystify the coming digital revolution, showing how NFTs will transform our online and offline interactions. Steve, what can people expect from this book? How are you feeling?
First of all, really good. Flurry of buys I think came in yesterday because we're trending again on Amazon and #1 on a couple categories. So that's always good. And it was cool for A16Z because Chris Dixon's book is coming out as well. And seeing like Scott, a research partner in A16Z, Chris Dixon, the co-founder, like next to each other, like 1 and 2 in like computers and technology is like a cool thing to see. For us, like we just want to help bring this world a little bit closer to mass adoption. And by mass adoption, I don't mean people coming in to buy my ETH bags. I mean using this technology to better the lives of consumers and businesses with aligned incentive structures. The thing I would say to people is one, appreciate everybody who buys. It's $30, so the equivalent of like 0.01 ETH or something. So just go out and spend it. You spend that on gas. But #2, like if you have friends or family or companies or people who don't understand this technology, we have spent 2 years with an editor who is non-crypto native, really giving examples, case studies, meeting them where they are, explaining this technology so that it can be used, providing a framework for success, and then some executional considerations. So again, like, as an example, which we'll probably talk about in our show in a little bit here, I know somebody whose dad, they talked about it yesterday publicly, their dad is tech forward, didn't understand NFTs. They handed the book to their dad. I offered to send him an early copy because of this. And their dad texted them and said, I understand what you've been trying to tell me for 2 years. So really cool thing. And last thing I'll say is that, if you don't want to take my word for it, the back of the book jacket has your quotes on it. We have endorsement quotes written on the back of the book from Gary Vaynerchuk, Chris Dixon, that co-founder of A16Z, 2 Nobel Prize winners, former chief marketing officer of Progressive, and then Adam Brotman, who former chief digital officer of Starbucks, who brought Starbucks into Web3 and architected their mobile payments plan. So some pretty good, endorsements there. So do me a solid, give it a look if you can. My editor would kill me if I didn't shill and say, go buy it. You could buy it literally anywhere books are sold. And, it helps drive that mass adoption curve forward. So appreciate the opportunity to kind of shill to your awesome, super intelligent stage here.
Steve, those might be some big names, but you've also got Bcheck and Legendary who have pre-ordered. So I don't know about those names, but you've
The
got
biggest. Those are the biggest. Those are like, yeah, those are huge.
Look, definitely go check it out. As I said, me and Legendary have already pre-ordered. And one of the things I've heard you talk about, Steve, before, and I think this is pertinent, is when people produce so much content for free for long periods of time, people wonder, like, look, how can we support you? We don't necessarily have tokens out in the ecosystem, or we don't have ways. Like, this would be one of the ways, I think, if you want to support someone who has been doing a great job in the space, a good actor over a long period of time. So Steve, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate you, man. Cap, Steve, thank you so much for joining us. I know you got to roll to your next show.
Thanks for having us. Really enjoyed it. We definitely should do this again. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. We need to return the favor as well and have you guys do a full crossover show one day.
Absolutely, man. We will. We would love that.
Awesome.
Love it. Take care, guys.
Talk to you soon.
Thank you all.
Talk to you soon. We're going to run a little bit longer today because I believe we have the Tensor co-founder, Legendary. Is that correct?
Yep, we got Ilmoy with us on stage. Tensor did comment on the price lock and was very spontaneous in having someone from the team joining us.
Yeah, let's talk about that for maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Just to unpack it a little bit more, as I mentioned already in the snapshot, which is pinned up top, where you get all of the news from the previous 24 hours. The price lock, we had this news. Tensor announces price lock, a simple way to long or short NFTs. The short explanation, which I hope to dive into in a moment, is the price lock equals paying for the right to buy or sell an NFT at the locked price. So if you go long and the floor price goes above the locked price, you can bank the profit. If you go short and the floor price goes below the locked price, you bank profit too. So very, very interesting development. Would love to welcome Ilmoy to the stage with us for their first time with us. Ilmoy, welcome to the stage. Was my explanation of the price lock acceptable? How are you doing?
GM guys, stoked to be here. Yeah, actually it was really good. You actually summarized it really, really well. And yeah, I don't know whether that means that our marketeer, who's also British, did a really good job, or whether that you just really got it. But I think you totally nailed it. It's exactly what you said. You go long or short, and it's a capital efficient way of doing it. And then if the price moves in your favor, then you bank profit. And if it doesn't move in your favor, then you only lose the upfront fee, which is about 3 to 4%.
Very interesting. So this is obviously one of your flagship announcements most recently. It's one of the big developments. Why was this the kind of next stage of development for Tensor, in your opinion?
Yeah, so this is actually our absolutely biggest announcement. Like literally, if you look at the engagement and like the reach, it's literally our number one right now. And the reason we were excited to work on this product was because obviously we're talking to our users, talking to market makers all the time. And the two things they kept telling us about NFTs were, one, it's very capital inefficient. So if you want to buy a Mad Lad, you kind of need to put up the entire 150 SOL right now. And two, there's no way to hedge. And especially for market makers and more professional traders, which is sort of the audience that we had in mind when we started Tensor, that is really, really important because they need to manage their risk. And so Price Lock unlocks both of those in a very simple and hopefully easy to use UI.
That's awesome. Really, really important there. How do you gauge the feedback from the community? Like when were you working with the community to come up with that? And what were you modeling this on? Like, I believe there's not very many protocols that it's even possible to do this with yet. Like when you look at the competition, where do you see yourselves?
Yeah, so Price Lock is a product that's sort of a little bit in its own category. And the reason we ended up there was not because we said, okay, let's build something totally different. It was more so like we said, let's think from first principles about what makes sense for NFTs. And so some of the thinking that went into Price Lock is the following. First of all, we wanted the product to be safe. And so we didn't want to have an oracle. That's really important because if you look at many DeFi hacks, very often, like Mango comes to mind, what happens is the oracle that is responsible for pricing something on chain gets manipulated, and that leads to loss of funds. And so we didn't want to have that. We wanted to have a P2P protocol where there's an agreement between a funder and a taker of the lock, and that agreement stays between them two, and there's no protocol risk in between. Some other things that we thought about really hard were, how do we make this as simple as possible and as easy to use as possible? Because again, like maybe for folks coming from DeFi, some of these more financial concepts are pretty familiar. But for many people who don't come from DeFi and they just kind of like NFTs and they kind of find them fun, you know, thinking about all these like gamma, beta, zeta, like it's too complicated. Like you don't want that. And so long story short, what we tried doing is asking ourselves, if we were designing a product from ground up, from first principles that would accomplish the two things I mentioned earlier, how would we do it? And we sort of went back and forth, tried a bunch of different designs, took them to our users. Like there's been probably 7 rounds of, you know, UI iteration of this thing. Like everything moved around, everything got killed, like changed. And eventually we settled on something that, to be honest, felt pretty intuitive. Like you go there, there's 2 buttons, it's long and short, and then you can have a slider depending on how many you want to do. It shows you your profit and loss chart, and it also pretty clearly outlines the risks when you are funding these things. And that's it. And you press the button and it just kind of works.
Very, very interesting. Really interesting. Legendary, do you have anything on this? Otherwise, I have one more question.
I have a question too, but go for yours first, and I'll ask mine after that.
Okay. One of the things, I mean, I think from the technical standpoint, that kind of explains things nicely. This is clearly something which people are looking for in the market, as you said. One of the things Tensor has been spoken about quite a lot is because everyone wants to try to use Tensor as much as possible. Obviously, you have a token coming at some point, I believe, and people are bidding, people are market making. One of the really cool features I've been using a lot is the market making feature, which I also think is one of your big differentiating factors as things stand, because my understanding is that that doesn't exist anywhere else. So I've been enjoying that, experimenting. How does this affect the rest of the ecosystem? Should people be trying to use this? Should people just be, or is this one of the more risky things where it's like, look, only do this if you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I'd say it's somewhere in the middle. There's definitely some risk involved. And this is why when you're funding the lock, we literally do not let you click the button unless you click into the explainer and then click, I understand what I'm doing. And in the explainer, we literally like have 2 boxes that say, hey, here are the 2 possible outcomes. In one future, you get back your, let's say, soul. In another future, you get back an NFT that somebody sells into your lock, and then you get yield. You have to be comfortable with both of these, and you're not going to know which future it's going to be until it happens. Like we literally force the user to read that because we really want users to understand what they're doing. But at the same time, like the best maybe analogy to price lock is lending and reverse lending. And so like when somebody funds a lock, what they're really saying, let's take the example of a short lock, which you fund with Sol. When somebody funds a short lock, it's actually very similar to lending, because what they're saying is they're saying, yeah, you know, like I'll bid 140 for a Mad Lad, and best case, I get back my 140 Sol and a couple Sol extra yield. Worst case, somebody sells me a Mad Lad for 140. That's still below floor price, so I'm kind of going to be in profit. Or like maybe the floor moves a little below, but I'm kind of comfortable acquiring a Mad Lad at that price. And then equally on the long side, somebody's basically saying like, yeah, I'm willing to let go of my Mad Lad at say 180, 190, 200. And like if the market moves in that direction, you kind of have to be comfortable with that trade. But so it's like very similar thinking process. And so I think the risk there is like not astronomical. It's pretty like easy to reason about. Going back to like what I was saying earlier, we really tried making it simple. Like that was the #1 design goal for this product.
That's really, really interesting. One question that we've got in the comments from Oxy, I think this is a good question which might help people understand, because I think this is like a slightly more advanced tool, right? So I think there's some reasonable question here. It says this tool sounds more like option trading with calls and puts. Is that correct? It doesn't really sound like a long short position. Would you be able to speak to that and just try to clarify for people just trying to work out the difference between those two things?
Yeah, of course. So actually the terms long and short, they don't belong to a specific financial product. These are just generic terms used in finance to say I'm either bullish, in which case I go long, or I'm bearish, in which case I go short. And so I've sort of seen some confusion on Twitter where maybe there's like this idea that long and short are necessarily like perps or something. They just literally just mean direction, like up or down, right? That's your bet. And so the reason we use those terms is because they're very self-explanatory. Again, like going back, how easy is this thing to use? How simple is it? It's like, yeah, like long or short, that's all it is. And like going back to options, like, yeah, there's some elements that are similar. But like I said, there's also some elements that are similar to lending. And we really didn't try to model this on any existing financial instrument. Rather, we sort of thought, okay, what parts of whatever exists in finance makes sense that we can bring together here and make it as useful as possible for NFTs? Because ultimately, that's the market we're trying to financialize. And so we need to think from first principles what actually makes sense here.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for that clarification. I know you, Kadol, you have your hand raised. We're going to come to you in just a second. Legendary's got one question first, so we'll be with you in just a moment. Legendary first.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is maybe a more general one. I've been like a long-term Tensor user, really like the platform, and you've been obviously, building all those futures in the market making, the price look we just talked about, financializing the trading experience, but the core also being like an aggregator for NFTs. How do you basically balance that development of new features, financializing of NFTs, but also like keeping the core product accessible and easy to understand, so that when new users come to Tensor, that you're certainly onboarding right now with all the attention plus the campaigns that you got ongoing, don't feel at some point overwhelmed by all of the features that they could use, but have like an easy onboarding journey? Like, how do you just find the right balance between implementing new features but keeping the core product accessible and easy to understand?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. So what we try to do is we try to show different features to the user gradually as they land on the product. I'll give you a couple examples. When you first land on Tensor, we start you off on something we call light mode. That's in comparison to what we call pro mode, which is the more advanced version with all the charts and toggles and buttons and this and that. And we start you off in the light mode, and we kind of gently tell you, hey, by the way, there's a toggle over here. If you ever feel like you want to start with some of the more advanced stuff, go check it out. And then inevitably what happens is somebody reaches for a feature. Maybe it's the chart, maybe it's the escrow account, maybe it's something else. And we have like a chat where you can basically ask questions and our mods will reply. And one of the mods will say like, oh, you have to toggle on pro mode. And that's when maybe like after some time of already being familiar with the product, they jump into that more advanced mode. And we try to do that with like different parts of the product. So for example, another thing that we have are these like closable panes. So you sort of have this pane with activity, you have a pane with like the chat, you have a pane with like some advanced filtering and stuff. And all of those are closed when you first open the product. And that's again, because we want like when you first land, you see the most important thing, which is the NFTs. Like nothing else should matter at that point. It's only when you spend more and more time with the product and you're like, wouldn't it be cool to do this? Wouldn't it be cool to do that? And you kind of sort of find your way around and discover different parts of it. And then the final thing that we have is sort of this like what's new modal, which pops up about 10 minutes after using the product. And that just really shows you like, oh yeah, we just kind of added this feature, we added that feature that like takes you through some of these new developments that maybe you wouldn't be aware of otherwise.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for running through all of those things. Yukaro, your hand is raised. Do you have a question? Do you have a comment? What are your thoughts here?
First, thank you, Modern Market, for this amazing space, and thank you, Ilmoy, for kind answers. My question is that imagine someone who is diamond handing, for example, me, diamond handing asset dash NFT, right? Now, if I wanna rock this NFT up to the top, now I want to use it as a future trading collateral. For example, can I use my asset dash or can I use my Mad Lad as a collateral to take trades on it? For example, if I love Solana, right? I can sell it, buy back Solana whenever I want. It's Solana. But on NFTs, there are different trades, there are different pictures, different numbers and stuff. Can I use it as a collateral so I won't lose my NFT? Or maybe in trade, I will lose it, right? But as a collateral,
Great
If you want
question.
to keep your NFT, the best thing you can do with it is actually not trade with it. And that's probably not something the founder of a trading product should say, but at the end of the day, we always have the best interests of our users in mind. And honestly, man, if you like your Mad Lad, my advice to you is don't trade with it. Don't do anything. Just stake it, stack that gold. Armani is probably going to cook something fun in the future, and that'll be it. The second best option is if you really want to get some SOL against your NFT, you should actually try one of the lending products on Solana. So you can't currently do that on Tensor, but you can try maybe Sharky, maybe Fract, RainFi, there's a couple others. So yeah, I'd say that's kind of your second best shot.
Yeah, the thing that I've become familiar with is Sharkify. I think Legendary is a user of Sharkify as well, where you can get, I don't know that you can get like very long-term loans. They seem to be on a kind of rolling 7-day or 10-day basis. So maybe not like the length of time you're looking for, but that's definitely an option. Legendary, is that correct?
Yeah, it's rather short loans.
Yeah, it's like kind of
and
short term.
when my PFP still was my OK bear, I was borrowing against it. It's definitely a stressful experience to borrow against the PFP. So do agree with Ilmoy. If you want to keep it, just keep it and don't engage in those things.
Yukadol, did you have a final thought that you wanted to come back with there?
Sure. So the reason I say use, for example, MadLab as a collateral is like, just imagine options in Binance. For example, you have $1,000 worth of USDT. You borrow some more dollar, or let's say, margin option. You will borrow some dollars from Binance and you trade on it. If it goes higher, you make some money, you pay back the dollar wise, and use your increase your chances of taking the trade. For example, let's say you put the MATLAB, you get some Solana in return, you take the trade. For example, it is workable in bear market, because you don't want to lose your NFT, but the price gonna go down, so you take a short on your MATLAB price, and then you use it as a collateral to get some Solana to short your own NFT based on the floor price of the MATLAB. The reason I'm asking this, Ilmoy, is because I know you guys are amazing builders, and because the moment I used Tensor, I understood that these guys definitely understand the whole ecosystem of trading and everything. That's why I'm asking this hard question. It's a startup, right? It's a system that solves problem. So I think these ideas can help to better the system.
No, it's an interesting idea. Ilmoy, I wonder. I know that this is obviously a big announcement for you. A lot of time and effort would have gone into this one, but maybe whether it's what Yukadal is suggesting, is there anything that we can be expecting moving forward? Like, what's your plans moving forward?
Yeah, so actually the really cool thing about the current product is that it lets you achieve the same outcome through different means. And I'll explain what I mean. So the example you just gave is you have a MATLAB. Let's say you can borrow 150 SOL against it. So you go in Sharky, you borrow 150 SOL. You then go trade with that 150 SOL. You take a trade on some other collection and you make 200 SOL. Great, fantastic. You went back, you repaid your loan, maybe it cost you 160. and now you're 40 sol in profit and you still have your mad lad. Awesome. Now here's what you can do with price lock that gets you to the exact same outcome. You go on Tensor and you never have to put up your mad lad collateral at all. You keep it stake, you get that juicy gold from Armani, and instead what you do is you take 510 sol and you buy a bunch of locks for the collection that you want to trade, because these things are so capital efficient that you need so little capital to take a position for a week. And if you're correct about the price direction, exactly the same as in the previous example, you're actually going to get the exact same upside. Because let's say you lock it for a week, it moves, let's say you lock it at 10 sol, it moves to 50 sol, you get the exact same 40 sol profit. And so you're exactly in the same position as in your first example, which is you still have your mad lad and you have the 40 sol profit. But the really cool thing about this example is that throughout all this time, your mad lad remains staked. You're continuing to earn rewards from backpack. You never had to risk it. And in an absolute worst, if you're wrong about the direction, well, you lost 10 sol. Fuck it. But you didn't lose your mad lad. And that's what makes price lock so powerful.
Very, very interesting and very exciting. Congratulations on launching that, Ilmoy. Looking forward to play around with it myself. But we're going to have to close there, guys. This has been a pretty awesome show. Kind of went back to back with the interviews. It was amazing to have Captain and Steve with us today. And
so just to quickly say, do you guys want the code for the product?
Yes, please do send it. And Ilmoy, I was going to message, I was speaking to someone from marketing yesterday. We have a community as well, so if we could get a few extra maybe for some of our community, that would be awesome.
Well, it's actually just a single code that you guys can use, so I can just announce it right now. Yeah,
go for it.
The code is Locky, so LOCKY. It's kind of like lucky but with an O, and that will get you access to price lock.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate you joining us and sharing some of the updates. Good luck with it. Look forward to hearing more. But guys, that's been an awesome show today. I hope you enjoyed the slightly extended version. Just a reminder, we do this every single day, 7 a.m. Eastern time, 12 p.m. GMT, every day of the week, where we discuss all things to do with the NFT market, a little bit of the crypto market, and in general, how to ideally make a little bit or a lot of money on the internet. Thank you, Legendary, for co-hosting. Thank you to our speakers, Sam, Ilmoy, Yukadol, Kusho, and Captain Steve, who were with us earlier. Have a wonderful day. We will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.